there! Today we are continuing on with celebrating Women's History Month. Last time we talked about Henrietta Lacks and her cells that were taken from her without her permission and are still used in medical research to this day. Now we'll talk about someone who is still alive, and that someone is a climate activist by the name of Greta Thunberg. She is young, but she is mighty. She's never let her age keep her out of the conversation, and she's never backed down from her beliefs, no matter how scary or intimidating standing up for them must be at times. Who is Greta Thunberg? Greta was born on January 3rd, 2003, in Stockholm, Sweden. Her mother was an opera singer, and her father, as well as her grandfather, were both actors. She first learned about climate change and its harmful effects when she was about 8 years old. She really honed in on the cause, which could be in part due to her having Asperger's syndrome. Oftentimes, those with Asperger's will focus deeply on one idea, and for Greta, this focus was climate change. Instead of seeing this as a weakness, as some might, Greta considers this her superpower. It's also said that when she first learned of the climate crisis, she even stopped talking and stopped eating because she was so distraught. Her diagnosis of selective mutism has led her to say that because of this, when she does speak, it's because what she's saying is important. Within a few years, she had become vegan and stopped flying in airplanes, as these are both huge contributors to global warming. Greta made these changes herself and then later convinced her family to make the changes as well. She began to actively protest climate change when she was only 15 years old. She started by sitting outside of the country's parliament with a sign that read "School Strike for Climate." More and more people started joining her strike, and she started getting a lot of attention. She did start going back to school after the Swedish election, but continued her strikes every Friday, calling them Fridays for Future. She also encouraged other students to join in on the strike, and they did. Thousands across the world began to take part in Fridays for Future, with strikes occurring everywhere from the US to Canada, to the UK, and even France. Once her movement started gaining traction, she started receiving invitations to publicly speak about climate change. Can you imagine being 15 or 16 years old and being asked to speak at the World Economic Forum, in front of the European Parliament, or speaking at a UN climate event? She even spoke at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in both 2018 and 2019. I never grew out of being nervous and dreading talking in front of my class at school or my team at work, so I literally could not imagine. That UN summit in New York is one that really got a lot of eyes on her. Also interesting is that more weight was put on her words, as she didn't fly to New York, but instead took an emissions-free yacht for her journey. When speaking at this conference, she notably said, "This is all wrong. I shouldn't be here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean, yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words." Her emotion and her passion for wanting world leaders to do something about this pressing issue garnered much support. That event took place in September of 2019 and spurred millions of protesters to march for climate change. Countries like Germany and France pledged millions or billions toward protecting rainforests or fighting global warming. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, has been working to switch the country to now 80% renewable energy for electricity, and has passed a zero carbon bill in which they pledge to be carbon neutral by 2050. Naturally, she has also had her detractors. One man compared her to a Nazi propaganda poster. Another referred to her as a mentally ill Swedish child. And of course, Trump himself tweeted about her too, once saying she must work on her anger management problem and should go to an old-fashioned movie with a friend. Putin called her a kind but poorly informed teenager. I think it's hilarious how she handles these comments, as she'll sometimes change her Twitter bio to match tweets by Trump and Putin, or will even tweet about them using their own rhetoric. Greta has recognized that politicians, leaders, and companies are all responsible for making the changes required to stave off irreversible damage. According to one report published by the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in 2017, we had only 12 years left before we hit the point of irreversible damage. Assuming no increase, that gives us only 8 years to make dramatic changes. She utilizes a team of scientists and experts to back up her information and uses this to write her own speeches. This is probably why they come across as passionate and emotional, because they are. You can tell how strongly she feels about this and how badly she wants others to understand the importance of climate change. In March of 2019, at only 16, she was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Later that year, on December 11, 2019, she was named Time Magazine's Person of the Year, making her the youngest to ever earn that honor. I think it says a lot that a young teenager has become the face of climate change. We have politicians and leaders, but what Greta has said is right. For some reason, these politicians and leaders aren't listening to the scientists and to the evidence. They aren't implementing policies and restrictions to combat the climate crisis. Studies have shown that climate change is one of the biggest concerns of younger people. The responsibility has fallen on younger people to fight for change, but oftentimes they don't have the voice or the power to make a difference yet. When they are old enough to be in office or to make change the traditional way, it'll be too late for all of us. I've linked the book No One is Too Small to Make a Difference below. This includes all of her speeches if you're interested. You can also look all of them up here on YouTube, and seeing those is much more powerful than simply reading the speeches. To me, her emotion and her passion are what make her so powerful, and this is what scares so many politicians and leaders. You can also watch the documentary I Am Greta on Hulu to gain some more perspective into her story and her views. As you can tell, I of course believe in the climate crisis and recognize the need for dramatic change. I think we need more people like Greta in the public eye and in positions to make real change. Talking about it isn't enough, and real change has to be made to prevent irreversible damage. Thank you for joining me today to talk a little bit about Greta Thunberg. I highly recommend watching her documentary and some of her speeches, as they are really great. I'll catch you guys next time.